The shocking truth, why Paul called himself a slave at 3 a.m., you won't believe the reason. In the dead of night, a chilling voice echoed through the empty streets, pulling every soul out of their warm beds. I'm a slave. Paul screamed into the darkness, his voice breaking against the silence like glass shattering. It sent a shiver down the spines of anyone who happened to be awake, hearts thumping loud enough for the whole town to hear. What drove him to shout such a startling confession? Was it madness or something darker lurking beneath the surface? Paul had always been a quiet guy, the one who blended into the background. No one paid him much mind, an unassuming bank teller, maybe a little peculiar, but harmless. But that night, the edge of oblivion transformed him into something hauntingly different. He stood in front of his house, eyes wild and wide, hair tousled like he just woke from a nightmare, ironic considering he was wide awake, clutching a rusted chain that shimmered in the moonlight. How did he come to own something so dark and symbolic? The town whispered, but they didn't know the half of it. As he paced back and forth, the chain clanked with eerie finality. I'm bound to this life. He yelled, voice thick with anguish, a lament that felt like an echo of centuries gone by. The shadows danced around him, wrapping him in conspiracy, while the darkness seemed to breathe. Just then, a figure stepped from the night, a friend, or was it? A tattooed arm reached out, fingers quivering with uncertainty. Paul, man, talk to me. Emerged from clenched jaws. But the words were drowned by the faint whispers of the wind, turning into haunting howls spiraling up into the blackened sky. Before we continue, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who is part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. As the words hung in the thick, chilly night air, Paul's eyes darted over to a flickering street lamp, struggling against the encroaching shadows. Panic tightened in his chest like a vice. What was he truly a slave to? The rusted chain pulsed in his grip, and he felt it sucking the will to breathe right out of him. His heart pounded as memories flooded back, disjointed flashes of conversations and a place too close to the edge of sanity. The truth curled in his gut. Was it his job, his family, or something unseen that held him captive? The figure stepped closer, desperation mingling with fear on their face, urging Paul to drop the chain, but he stood frozen, the weight of his confession anchoring him. Just then, a distant siren wailed, sending another chill up his spine. All eyes were on him now, the pressure of curiosity escalating. Paul's next move could unravel everything, a mystery so tangled it made heads spin. What did he see in the darkness? What terrified him so deeply he was willing to scream it for the world to hear? The night was far from over, and Paul was not yet finished. More awaited them in the shadows, and they were about to get entangled in a truth that would shatter everything they believed. The figure standing before Paul hesitated, caught between the desperate urge to help and the instinct to flee. What happened, man? Please tell me. The fear in the voice echoed like the lingering siren in the distance. Paul's grip on the chain tightened, the cold metal biting into his skin, grounding him in his strife. I saw it. I saw them. His voice cracked, and he stumbled over the words. The shadows around him seemed to pulse, breathing with a life of their own. His friend's face morphed through a mixture of confusion and dread. What do you mean them? The night pressed in, thick with anticipation. Paul's brow furrowed as images flooded back, fragments of a dream, or was it a waking nightmare? He remembered tireless whispers, dark figures lurking just beyond sight, eyes that glinted like knives. They're coming for us, he said, shaking his head, panic rising like bile. They watch always. His friend took a step back, fear flickering in his eyes. Dude, you're scaring me. This isn't you. But somewhere beneath that fear, there was recognition, a memory sparking to life. That night at the bank, Paul's breath hitched, the words tumbling out dangerously. The safe, I shouldn't have opened it. Those words hung heavy in the air, the friend inhaled sharply. You opened it? Paul, what was in there? Paul dared not answer, but the ashen faces of the others in the bank came rushing back. He could almost hear their muffled screams, could see their eyes wide with horror when they realized the door was ajar only a moment before the shadows swept in. Maybe you dreamed it, his friend offered weakly, looking for a lifeline in the spiraling chaos. No, Paul growled, his voice shaking with conviction. It wasn't a dream. I felt it, something so wrong, so dark. And now it's hunting me. He turned his gaze back to the night, the chain jangling like a warning. Suddenly, a gust of wind swept through, making the street lamp flicker precariously. The shadows seemed to shift, merging into one ominous figure that lurked at the edge of a flickering light. Paul squinted, but the form melted back into darkness as quickly as it appeared, leaving an unsettling chill in its wake. Do you see it? Paul shouted, panic drumming in his chest. They're here. We have to go. His friend grabbed Paul's arm, pulling him closer. What do you mean, here? Who are you talking about? But Paul's eyes didn't waver from the dark expanse, sensing a presence. I don't know, but I can feel them closing in. We need to leave now. He backed away from the shadows, his heart racing like a freight train. Just then, a blood-curdling scream echoed through the air, piercing the night. It came somewhere from the depths of the town, an unmistakable plea for help. The sound shot through Paul like lightning, the anguish electrifying his every nerve. Did you hear that? Paul gasped, his pulse racing. There was no denying it, fear screaming at him, someone was in danger. They were no longer just witnesses, they were now part of a wider horror, a sinister night unraveling around them. Paul's friend looked paralyzed, and in that instant, a choice loomed before them: run or confront the darkness. We can't just leave them. Paul yelled, grappling with desperation. But as he took a step towards the sound, the shadows seemed to shift once more, growing darker, more tangible. Paul! No! His friend shouted, grabbing him back as the wails grew more frantic, more desperate. The air crackled with tension, a challenge thrown into the churning night. In front of them, the shadows' depths threatened to swallow everything whole. What awaited them in that darkness? The answer was tethered to the chain. The very chain Paul clutched as he moved closer, inching toward the chaos, unknowing that the shadows had their own plans for him. They had walked into something far beyond what either of them imagined. The scream now turned to silence, and the dark gathered heavy and oppressive around them. What truths lingered in that silence? What would it reveal as they crossed into the depths? The silence gnawed at Paul. It was suffocating, wrapping around him like a thick fog. His heart hammered in his chest as he stared into the swirling shadows, every instinct screaming at him to run. But the call for help echoed still in his ears, refusing to let him go. Paul, his friend's voice quivered, laced with fear. We have to get out of here. Now. But Paul couldn't shake the feeling. That scream wasn't just a sound, it was a tether to something much larger lurking in the dark. Paul stepped toward the void, feeling the chill seep through him. I can't just walk away, he whispered, half to himself. Why are you doing this? You're losing it. His friend shouted, panic evident in his tone. If we stay, we'll be next. Before Paul could respond, a low growl rumbled from the shadows, resonating deep within his bones. It was a sound that shouldn't belong in the world. The kind of sound that made the hairs on the back of your neck stand on end. His blood turned to ice as he felt something shift in the air, something thick and foreboding. Do you feel that? Paul asked, his voice barely above a whisper. It's like the night is alive. The growl intensified, wrapping around them, echoing off the brick walls. It came from everywhere yet nowhere at once, a haunting specter of dread that promised destruction. Shadows stretched and thinned, revealing flickers of movement, dark shapes writhing just beyond the light. Out of the corner of his eye, Paul caught a glimpse, a flash of something pale, too closely resembling a face twisted in agony before it darted away. "What the hell was that?" he exclaimed, his breath quickening. "I don't want to stick around to find out," his friend urged, eyes wide as he yanked on Paul's arm. But Paul pulled back, feeling the gravity of his surroundings drawing him deeper. Then the scream returned, but it was different now, a desperate, almost primal keening that sent shockwaves through the night. A sound that penetrated his skull and reverberated through his entire body. He swallowed hard, his instincts battling against the chains of his concern. What if it's a trap? His friend trembled, yet there was a strange, brief flicker of solidarity in the man's eyes. "I can't turn my back on someone in trouble," Paul shouted, fighting to keep the fear at bay, willing his heart to calm. "There's a chance to do something. We need to help." He took another trembling step toward the source of the cry, feeling the ground beneath him pulse with tension. Shadows twisted, converging as if alive, eyes flickering in the darkness. "Paul, wait." His friend protested, but it fell on deaf ears. Paul clenched the chain tight, feeling its cold bite, a lifeline in the overwhelming dark. Just as he reached the edge of light, the shadows coalesced into a distinct form. A figure cloaked in darkness emerged, stepping out like a nightmare coming to life. "Who are you?" Paul demanded, his voice cracking, but he knew that whatever was standing there was no ordinary threat. The thing in front of him was both hideous and captivating, a shadow twisted with haunting echoes of life. The figure stood still, its eyes boring into Paul's. "You sought the truth," it hissed, resonating in an otherworldly tone. "But truth is a dangerous game, and the cost may be your very soul." Paul's chest tightened, realization crashing over him like a wave. This was no mere encounter, it was the heart of a darkness he had unwittingly unleashed. He could feel its pulse entwining with his own, a sinister connection he hadn't asked for yet had stepped into blindly. What do you want from me?" he stammered, feeling the chain grow heavier in his grip, the shadows swirling closer, suffocating him in their embrace. The figure leaned in, and Paul could almost see the glint of something sharp in its eyes. "You've awakened us, Paul. Now, it's time to pay the price." His heart sank. As ominous laughter echoed around them, Paul realized he had no idea what he had truly unleashed, or what the darkness demanded in return. What would he do to survive this night? And would he uncover the horrors hiding behind the truth he thought he sought? The darkness quivered, charged with an energy Paul could taste on the back of his tongue. The figure before him radiated an unsettling mix of power and pain, its gaze boring into him like a hot brand. Paul shuddered, a wave of dread crashing over him, but he couldn't turn away. It was as if an invisible force latched onto him, compelling him to step closer. "Please just tell me what you want." His voice shook, threading anxiety through the thick atmosphere. The figure tilted its head, the movement almost animalistic. "You seek the truth while clutching onto your chains. But your grasp is weak, Paul." As if the shadows reacted to its words, they tightened, wrapping around his ankles like serpents. He felt their chill seep into his skin, sending jolts of panic racing through him. "No. I can break free," he cried, struggling against their grasp. "Break free?" The figure laughed, a bone-chilling sound that echoed in the hollow night. "You are already bound, Paul. The truth is simply another chain, and you will find that escape is not in your will, but in your acceptance." Paul's breaths quickened, each inhale laced with fear. He thought of his friend, of their shared experiences, long nights filled with laughter now eclipsed by this dread-filled moment. The darkness clawed at the edges of his mind, and the paradox of needing to know was pitted against the sheer terror of what that knowledge meant. "Listen to me," he shouted, desperation creeping into his tone. "I will help, but you have to help me understand." For a moment, the figure held still, the weight of silence thickening. Paul could feel the anticipation of the shadows, like they were holding their breath. "Your understanding will come at a price," it finally whispered, every word like ice slithering through the air. "What price?" Paul challenged, instinctively scanning the dimness for a way out, but fear kept him anchored. Your friend, the figure replied, its eyes narrowing into slits. A sickening realization hit Paul, cold and heavy. Any hope he had of protecting his friend faded into thin air, swallowed by the growing darkness. No! He shouted, but the shadows only hissed in response, a chorus of mockery. Would you barter his life for the truth? Do you have the courage to know? Paul felt bile rise in his throat. He couldn't do it, not even for the answers that clawed at his mind. Yet, the desperate screams from the shadows echoed in his heart. He had to know, didn't he? His friend's voice pierced his thoughts, urgent and pleading. Paul! Get out of there. We can find another way. But every instinct inside him screamed otherwise. The allure of truth beckoned. The thought of running from this darkness was paralyzing. Choose, Paul, the figure urged, its voice laced with anticipation. Which soul will you save? The one you love or your own desire to uncover what lurks beneath? Time seemed to freeze, silence wrapping around Paul like a suffocating shroud. He glanced back, his friend's eyes wide with terror, and suddenly, the weight of the choice felt unbearable. Don't listen to it, Paul. His friend pleaded, desperation thinly veiling his words. Before Paul could respond, the shadows surged, pulling him deeper into their embrace. A deafening roar filled the air, drowning out all reason, all fear, as if the very night itself had erupted. As darkness folded and enveloped him, Paul knew he had to decide. But time was running out. He felt his resolve shatter. Would he forsake his friend in pursuit of the truth, or would he turn his back on the darkness at the last moment? The tendrils of shadow crept closer, secrets whispering in his ear. And as the world around them erupted into chaos, Paul faced the void, terrified but determined, standing at the precipice of his fate. What would happen when the shadows demanded their sacrifice? Time was slipping away. Would he have the strength to face the truth, or would he become a pawn in the very game he sought to escape? Paul's heart hammered in his chest as chaos roared around him. The shadows pressed in like an army, their whispers turning into a cacophony of screams, urging him toward a decision. Time stretched, each moment bleeding into the next, choking him with an urgency he couldn't comprehend. Paul! You have to fight it. Please. His friend's voice sliced through the madness, but even it felt swallowed by the dark. Paul clutched his head, desperate to drown out the shadow's sinister promises. They knew his fears, his weaknesses, and they twisted them into something unbearable. Do it, the figure hissed, its presence looming like a storm cloud. Choose the truth, and perhaps the shadows will spare him. The flicker of hope ignited briefly, but it burned quickly to ash when Paul remembered that truth had never promised safety. With every agonizing second, he could feel the darkness closing in tighter, squeezing away his resolve. Which soul do you value more, Paul? The figure taunted, amusement lacing its voice. The one bound to the earthly realm, or the one that seeks the freedom of knowledge? I can't, Paul whispered, shaking his head as if it could dispel the crushing reality. In a sharp, frantic motion, he glanced back at his friend, who was now held fast in the thrall of shadows himself, his face twisted in anguish. It dawned on Paul then that this wasn't merely a choice. It was a trap, a game weighed down by insatiable hunger. The shadows twisted, gaining form and shape, revealing faces of those he had lost, friends, family, their eyes pleading for salvation. He recoiled in horror, realizing that this was their haunt, their ethereal prison, and he was being dragged into the depths with them. No! He screamed, flailing against the tightening grip around his waist. You won't take us. With a surge of adrenaline, Paul pushed against the dark tendrils, fueling the moment with sheer defiance. But all the while, the echoes of what he could gain tugged at the corners of his mind, secrets, knowledge, truths hidden beneath layers of pain. It was intoxicating. The figure leaned closer, its breath cold as ice against his skin. Think of what you could learn, Paul. Think of the power you might wield when you accept what lies beneath the surface. I don't want your power. Paul shouted, tears of frustration sting his eyes. His desperation shimmered in the heavy air, igniting something deep inside him. He wasn't just facing shadows, he was facing all the choices he'd made that led him to this moment. Suddenly, the darkness shuddered, flaring for just a moment as if wounded. Paul caught a hint of a glimmering light, a memory, his friend laughing, the warmth of a shared sunrise. Without thinking, Paul lunged back, the shadows letting out a guttural cry in surprise. I choose my friend. He yelled, summoning every reserve of strength, every ounce of courage he possessed. That in response, the figure flared with furious energy, anger tangible in the air. So be it, but know this, Paul, the truth is relentless, and you cannot escape its grip. As the shadowy tendrils writhed in anger, a blinding light burst forth around Paul, contrasting sharply against the blackness that sought to consume him. But the ground beneath him trembled, and an ominous darkness began to swirl around the light. The choice had shifted the balance, and now, he had unleashed something that even he didn't understand. Paul! Echoed his friend's voice, a fragile lifeline amidst the chaos. But in that moment, everything felt uncertain. Would they be swallowed whole, or could they break the hold of the darkness? As the shadows swirled with renewed rage, Paul stood firm, gripping tightly to his decision and the light that had sparked within him. He felt the weight of the past tug insistently at his heart, and he knew it wasn't over yet. Would the light guide them to safety, or was this just the beginning of their descent into darkness? The blinding light engulfed Paul, enveloping him in a cocoon of warmth, but the shadows retaliated with a howl that echoed through the air like a banshee's scream. The chaos twisted, dragging the illumination into the depths of their wrath. Paul felt the push of fear beneath the surface, thrumming like a heartbeat in his chest. Paul! Hold on! His friend cried, struggling against the relentless tendrils that wrapped around him. With every shout, the darkness reacted, pulling tighter, angrier, as if they were thrumming with a life of their own. Paul's heart raced, uncertainty gnawing at his stomach. I'm here. Just hold on. The light flickered, pulsing with his desperation. Somewhere deep within, a voice whispered insidiously, leave him. The truth belongs to you alone. It was a seductive temptation, promising knowledge beyond measure. But was it worth the price? No. Paul burst out, shaking his head violently. I want to abandon him. With that vow, he concentrated on the warmth radiating inside him, pushing against the overwhelming darkness that sought to consume both him and his friend. As he envisioned the shared laughter, memories flooded back, rippling through him like sunlight breaking through clouds. The smile his friend had worn on their last day at the park, the simple joy of a shared slice of pizza, the adventurous gleam in those eyes. Remember the world outside. Paul shouted, desperation infusing his voice. The shadows rippled, reluctant, fed on fear and doubt, but they couldn't touch the brilliance of that memory. Though they howled and shrieked, a crack ran through the surrounding darkness, and a soft glow emanated from within. In that moment, Paul seized the flickering light and wove it into a lifeline. We're not trapped. We can break free. He felt the connection strengthen as he reached out, grasping for his friend through the swirling chaos. Suddenly, a thunderous roar erupted, shaking the very fabric of their reality. The figure loomed larger, shadows curling up around its form like angry serpents. Foolish boy! It spat, rage splintering the air. You cling to false promises. False promises? Paul shot back, feeling the fierce determination swell within him. Love doesn't lie. I want to let you take him. The darkness shuddered again, and the shadows recoiled as if burned. The pulsating light intensified, reflecting his resolve. He saw it now, not just a weapon, but a shield. Paul! I feel it. His friend called from the depths. Pull me out. I can't hold on. A fresh surge of urgency jolted Paul forward. We're in this together. Just trust me. With a final roar, Paul pulled on every ounce of energy within him, shaping the light into a blinding spear of hope aimed at the heart of the figure. It pierced through the darkness, longing to pull them both out from this hell. A brilliant explosion of light erupted, temporarily blinding him, but Paul pressed on through the white-hot chaos, reaching for his friend. "You're coming with me." In the blink of an eye, the shadows erupted, crying out in pure rage, but then they began to dissolve, unraveling from existence. Paul could see his friend, struggling to break free, trapped but not broken, but just as Paul felt the warmth of connection envelop them both, the darkness surged one last time, and a chilling whisper slithered through the remnants of chaos. "You think you've won, but the truth is only beginning." And then he felt it, the ground dropping beneath him, the light faltering, and a terrifying realization washed over him. What had he truly unleashed? As he plunged into the unknown, clinging desperately to his friend, Paul realized this battle was far from over. The truth awaited just beyond, darker and more complex than he had ever imagined. What lay ahead might be even worse than the shadows they faced. "Paul!" His friend screamed as the darkness closed in around them like a freezing, suffocating blanket. What would happen next? Were the shadows really gone, or had they only gone deep underground to plot their return? The darkness swallowed them whole, a suffocating void that pressed against Paul's chest, robbing him of breath. He gripped his friend's arm tighter, fear clawing at his throat. "Hold on." His voice echoed through the silence, desperate and thin, as if it could pierce the shadows surrounding them. With each second, it felt like they were sinking deeper into an abyss where time had no meaning. The chill crept into his bones, igniting memories of fear he thought he'd buried long ago. He couldn't shake the feeling that the nightmarish figure was still lurking, somewhere nearby, ready to strike. "Paul!" His friend gasped, the tremor in his voice revealing the true weight of their predicament. "What is happening? Where are we?" I don't know." Paul shouted back, the panic rising like bile. "But I swear I won't let go. We're together in this." From the darkness, whispers curled around them, sharp and slithering. "Together? You think unity can save you?" The voice dripped with malice, and Paul's heart raced. He remembered the insidious temptation that had tried to lure him before. "You should have taken the truth for yourself. Instead, you cling to a fleeting emotion." Footsteps no, shadows swirled closer, their presence felt but not seen. Paul's mind spun. Was this a manifestation of his deepest fears? Would he be forced to confront not only the darkness outside but the darkness within? "Stay strong," Paul shouted, trying to maintain the bond that tethered him to his friend. He could feel their hearts hammering against the oppressive silence, and a glimmer of warmth sparked deep inside him. He needed to harness that light again. "Remember the pizza. The jokes," Paul urged, grasping at the threads of their shared past. "We have to push back. That's our power." "Do you really believe that?" Came the chilling voice again, more insistent this time. "Would it matter if you were alone? What happens when the laughter fades? Can love survive in this dark place?" Paul's chest tightened. Doubts crept in through the cracks of his resolution like dark vines, weaving through his memories and tugging at his resolve. "No," he shouted, his voice a raw rasp. "Love is everything. It's powerful. It could outshine this darkness." But the shadows mocked him, twisting and writhing, forming twisted shapes in the inky black. "Powerful enough to conquer the truth of your soul? What lies beneath that rosy facade of friendship? Your connection is fragile, it can shatter." Suddenly, a piercing scream erupted from his friend, a splinter of despair. "Paul! I can't see. Help me." The memory of their last day together surged back, the bright sun, the carefree laughter, the undeniable bond. Paul felt the shadows claw at his heart as he battled the encroaching despair. "I won't let us fall apart. Not now." Clenching his fists, he drew in a breath, forcing warmth into his surroundings. Light flickered timidly at the edges of the void, struggling against the tide of darkness. I can't lose you. He shouted again, his voice filled with defiance. As he concentrated, focusing on every joyful moment they had shared, the darkness roared back, louder and angrier. The moment he thought they would be engulfed, a bright beam erupted through the blackness, forcing shadows to recoil. Paul! It's his friend's voice cut off in panic. Don't give up. Paul urged, pouring everything he had into that light. We can break through this. But maybe it was their own fears they faced, fears that could tear them apart even if they fought side by side. What awaited them on the other side was still a terrifying question haunting their every heartbeat. As the light intensified, a blinding flash erupted, and then, stillness. Where were they? Had they crossed to the other side, or was this a new level of the nightmare? Paul the first feel something, his friend whispered, dread creeping into his voice. What if it's worse? The silence loomed larger than ever, heavy, pregnant with secrets yet to be discovered. What awaited them on the other side? Would they find solace or even darker truths? The silence felt like a living entity, closing in on them from all sides. Paul's heart pounded in his chest, a frantic rhythm that echoed in the void. He turned his head slowly, straining to see through the oppressive blackness that wrapped around them like a cold, clammy shroud. Can you hear that? His friend's voice trembled, barely above a whisper. Paul strained to listen, and then he felt it, a low humming, a sound almost too faint to register. It pulsed through the air, vibrating against his skin, unsettling and foreign. Yeah, I hear it, Paul replied, forcing his voice to remain steady. What is it? But before his friend could respond, the humming morphed into harsh whispers, slicing through the silence like a steel blade. You think you can escape? The voice slithered around them, dripping with malice. You're still here, still trapped in your own stupidity. The words gnawed at Paul's insides, twisting his gut with anxiety. He grit his teeth, trying to fight back the creeping dread. Shut up! He shouted into the dark, defiance mingling with fear. You don't own us. But the shadows laughed, a twisted, echoing sound that made the hairs on the back of his neck stand on end. Ah, but ownership is not what matters. It's your own fear that binds you, Paul. And it will consume you. Just then, a flash of light flickered nearby, then vanished as quickly as it appeared. It left a lingering sense of something or someone dancing in the corners of his mind. Did you see that? Paul asked, fear creeping into his voice. No, his friend replied, the quaver unmistakable. I don't see anything. Paul, I feel like I'm losing you. We're not alone here. What if this is it? What if we stay lost forever? No. We can't give up. We have to. Paul's words were abruptly cut off as the darkness shifted. The air crackled and a figure emerged from the gloom. Its form was vague, sometimes human-like and sometimes monstrous, with glowing eyes that flickered like dying embers. Look who finally decided to show their face, the figure hissed, circling them like a predator sizing up its prey. Paul's heart raced. What was it? The voice was familiar, and yet not. Who are you? Paul called out, trying to keep his fear steady, but it trembled, uneasy under the weight of the shadows. What do you want? The figure stepped closer, and Paul could feel the cold seep into his skin like ice water. Want? I want nothing from you. No, I simply wish to reveal the truths you've buried deep within. The truths you refuse to acknowledge. What truths? His friend shouted, locking onto the figure with futile courage. You think you can scare us with shadows? We're not afraid. Ah, young one, but you should be. For the shadow you face is not mine, it is your own. Its laughter rippled through the dark, sharp and almost joyful. Paul felt a chill race up his spine. We're not afraid of anything, he said, staring at the figure defiantly. Not anymore. Then why do you feel that old familiar knot tightening in your guts? Why do you still clutch to each other like a lifeline? Fear has a funny way of twisting its claws around you, doesn't it? The figure leaned in closer, its face obscured but the intent clear. Let me show you suddenly, they were not alone. Images flooded Paul's mind, memories unbidden. Moments where choices transformed him, paths chosen and paths abandoned. Visions of laughter turned to cries, friendships shattered by betrayal, and darkest secrets clawing their way to the surface. "Stop it!" he shouted, squeezing his eyes shut. "You're lying." But when he opened them again, shadows danced with a new recklessness, weaving through the tales of his past. Each image throbbed with pain, a history clawing at the fabric of their fragile bond. Would they emerge stronger, or would this break them? Then the figure retreated, leaving them teetering on the edge of a precipice, both terrifying and revealing. Before Paul could gather his strength or formulate a plan, the whispering that filled the air sharpened to a scream. His friend. "Paul! What is happening?" The terror in his voice made Paul's heart lurch. I don't know." Paul stammered, searching desperately for answers. The shadows swirled, pressing against them, moments hanging heavy in the air. The figure's swirling laughter echoed within, leaving an unnerving question: what truth lay buried beneath the surface, waiting to be unearthed? In that instant, Paul realized he had to confront the darkness. To face the truth before him. The heat of decision flooded his veins, but could he bear the weight? As more screams echoed through the void, he was left wondering, could they truly break free, or was this darkness about to consume everything they held dear? Paul's chest tightened as the echoes of his friend's scream faded. Time felt like it had stopped, rooted in the surreal moment where shadows became their greatest enemy. He could see his friend, body tense, fists clenched. Their bond felt more fragile than ever, threatening to unravel with every whisper in the shadows. The figure returned, eyes glowing brighter, illuminating the darkness with malevolent delight. "Such a precious connection you have," it taunted, voice dripping with contempt. "But what is it really?" "A bond forged in fear, the very chains that bind you here." "No!" Paul shouted, stepping protectively in front of his friend. The electric fear coursed through him, igniting an unexpected spark of defiance. "We won't let you manipulate us. We know each other. Do you?" The figure's laughter sliced through Paul's resolve, cold and mocking. "Let us see how well you truly know one another. How well do you know yourselves?" Suddenly, the air thickened, swirling like an ominous fog swirling around them. The shadows molded into shapes, people from their past, familiar faces that morphed into distorted versions of what they had once known and loved. Paul felt a wave of nausea hit him as he recognized his childhood friends, now twisted and blurred, their expressions heavy with disappointment and betrayal. "No, this isn't real," he yelled, agony lacing his words. "You're trying to trick us." "Am I?" the figure crooned, watching with kindling delight. "Or am I showing you what you truly fear?" It stepped closer to Paul and whispered, "You think you're so different from them. But are you? Dig deep, Paul. Do you dare?" An image shattered through his mind's eye. A dark memory, buried but not forgotten, a choice he had made years ago, a moment that had shattered the trust of someone he loved. The guilt was like fire in his veins. The shame threatened to engulf him whole. "Stop it!" he shouted, hands clutched at his temples, trying to pull the memories away. His friend clutched Paul's arm. "What is happening? Please. You're scaring me." As if hearing the plea, the figure turned its eyes to Paul's friend. "Ah, but this one has secrets too. Do you think he is safe?" Shadows twisted and began to recreate memories of betrayal, of moments when loyalty had faltered. Paul's heart sank, his fears shifting to anger that this fiend was tearing at the very fabric of their friendship. "No." Paul breathed, struggling against the tide of memories threatening to drown him. "This is not who we are. This isn't real. Isn't it?" The figure taunted, its voice a serpent's hiss, chilling in the silence that stretched between them. "Look in the mirror, boys. The reflection isn't as pretty as you'd like to believe." Face your fears, let them merge with you. Only then will you understand. The air crackled around them, vibrating with an uncomfortable energy. The shadows swirled, and Paul felt an oppressive weight settle over his shoulders. He gritted his teeth, longing for the sunlight, the warmth of freedom. Just as despair began to tighten its grip, something clicked inside Paul, a fleeting memory of courage, the spark of love that had brought him and his friend together in the first place. They don't define us. He shouted into the dark, forcing conviction into his voice. We do. We are not our fears. The figure recoiled, anger flaring like a storm. Bravery, huh? A dangerous game you play. Are you sure you're ready for what comes next? As the figure's laughter faded, the whispers turned into a deafening roar. Light flickered around the edges of the darkness, drawing them towards something, an exit, a path back to reality. Paul grabbed his friend's hand, squeezing it tightly. We fight together. No more running, no more hiding. The shadows quaked with uncertainty, as if sensing the shift, forming a vortex that threatened to suck them back into the foreboding abyss. But before they could take a step, the figure's voice rang out, cold and twisted, let us see if you can face what lies on the other side of fear. Can you handle the shadows that linger in the light? Welcome to the truth of your spirit. Paul felt a jolt of realization. This battle was just beginning, and they might not emerge whole. He looked at his friend, their hearts pounding in sync, their fears transforming into a shared purpose. They were no longer standing against shadows alone. Was this truly the fight they wanted, or was it just a prelude to something far more terrifying? The echoes of their past screeched through the air, leaving them hanging on the precipice of revelation. A question loomed overhead like a storm cloud, heavy and foreboding. Would they be able to confront their deepest fears, or would the darkness swallow them whole? The shadows roared back, rearing like a dangerous tide, threatening to engulf all light. But Paul stood his ground, feeling a surge of determination burning within him. He squeezed his friend's hand, grounding them both in this maelstrom of terror. We can't go back. He shouted above the chaos. We'll face whatever awaits together. With every ounce of strength, Paul envisioned the warmth of their friendship, the shared memories that had kept them anchored through storms. It wasn't just about fear anymore. It was about stepping into the unknown together, about embracing the truth for what it could bring. The chaotic whispers around them seemed to quiet, as if considering the strength of their unity. What lies beyond that door? The figure taunted, its voice like ice scraping against rock. Is it worth everything you hold dear? Paul's heart raced. Yes. He declared, pushing against the rising doubt. We'll take on whatever comes. We're stronger than our past. The figure seemed to recoil as a blinding light flickered around them, bathing the shadows in a translucent glow that weakened their hold. Paul felt the chains of guilt and fear start to loosen, flickering away like fading smoke. Together. His friend shouted, eyes illuminated with steely resolve. Let us do this. And just like that, they leapt forward, hand in hand, into the blinding light. The two friends collided with reality, the light exploding around them in a kaleidoscope of brilliant color. They felt the immense pressure of the darkness giving way, the screams fading into nothingness, as they crossed an unseen threshold. Suddenly, they landed on solid ground, gasping for breath in a clearing bathed in sunshine. The air felt alive, sweet with the scent of blooming flowers. Birds soared overhead, chirping cheerfully, their songs a stark contrast to the chaos they had just escaped. Paul looked around, bewildered but relieved. They had made it. We did it. His friend exclaimed, laughter bubbling up like effervescent joy. We actually did it. Yet, beneath the surface of joy, shadows still lingered at the edges of their minds. Paul's relief mixed with a tinge of unease, a reminder that the truth would forever come with its own ghosts. What now? He pondered aloud, glancing at the horizon dotted with whispered fears. He could still hear the murmurs of shadows far back in the periphery. We move forward, his friend said, a steadying confidence in his voice. Whatever truths we face, we'll face them together. We broke free, right? That's what matters. A warmth spread through Paul's chest, like sunshine dispelling an early morning fog. They had confronted darkness, and it hadn't consumed them. They had pushed through the fear and emerged into the light. Yeah, Paul agreed, smiling. And if those shadows ever come back, we'll fight them again. Together. He knew they would always carry remnants of this night with them, but now they were bound not by fear or guilt but by a fierce, unwavering connection. With a chuckle, Paul added, "No more creepy figures in the dark, okay? I'm done with horror movies for a while." His friend nodded, laughter dancing in his eyes. Same here. Let us stick to living our lives and making new memories. We've earned this. And so, hand in hand, they set forth from the clearing, ready to embrace all the adventures ahead. The past provided lessons but no longer defined them, their bond had emerged stronger, lighting the way through whatever lay before them. As the sun sank below the horizon, Paul took one look back, a moment of reflection and final farewell to the darkness they had endured. He whispered a quiet promise to honor it without forgetting the fight it took to reclaim their lives. Then, with a sense of liberation, he turned to the future. The world beyond was bright, full of potential and warmth. Feeling elation course through him, Paul urged, "We've got this. Let us go." And the shadows? They faded, but not forgotten. Some battles forged us, and some truths empowered. But for now, they raised their heads into the glowing horizon, ready to welcome the dawn. Before we wrap this up, let me hit you with something super important. You need to subscribe now so you don't miss what happens next in this incredible journey. Smash that like button now to fuel our community's growth. Flood the comments section to share your reactions and any wild theories about the shadows and the truth Paul discovered. And listen up, you need to instantly share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this epic conclusion. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second to share.